Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us on our webinar about employment in the Salesforce ecosystem. My name is Kevin Smith. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Sales Engineering with EnablePath. We also are joined by a few other folks from our team here, although I wanted to make a note just at the beginning of the webinar that we are going to touch broadly on the ecosystem, and this is not focused on just focused on EnablePath, but rather is taking a broader look at the Salesforce ecosystem and employment opportunities, benefits of employment in the ecosystem, types of employers, types of roles. But we do have a couple other folks from our team here at EnablePath. Joining us today are Ashley, she's the Director of Talent Acquisition, Deb, who's our Operations Manager, David, who's a consultant with us and recently made the change to come over to the Salesforce ecosystem, not just to EnablePath, but to the Salesforce ecosystem, and Michelle Hunter, who works with us. She's the Director of Marketing, and she's facilitating the webinar today. Not to pitch us, but just for a frame of reference as to who EnablePath is, we are a platinum partner with Salesforce.com. We're what's referred to as an SI, or a service implementation partner, and we primarily do implementations and optimizations of Salesforce and the systems that may touch it. So if you think about the analogy of Salesforce being building material and us being a home builder, that's an easy analogy for people to understand, and maybe one that we'll use throughout the webinar. We do a lot of work in manufacturing, health and life science organizations, general business services, and we've been around for quite a while. We've been around 10 years. We've got a good customer satisfaction ratings. We're certified platinum by Salesforce, which just means that we've got plenty of resources and plenty of experience, and we've done enough projects, and we maintain certifications that are appropriate for our people in the space. But again, we're not going to talk too much about EnablePath. We're going to talk more about the ecosystem in general. We took a look at the registrants, and we've got it looks like a great group of folks on from a lot of diverse backgrounds. We see some folks that we know are users of the system, clients of ours prior. We see competitors that are on, and that's fine. You know, we do these webinar series, and we do quite a few of them, and we strive to really provide added value and be an added value resource in the ecosystem. And we do it through the curation and interpretation of public information. So you're not going to hear anything here that is confidential or private. It's all public space information. And we just sift through it and attempt to interpret it for the purposes of advancing the ecosystem. And it really is our belief that the more talented the ecosystem is, the stronger all of the participants, not just employee base, our company, but really, you know, kind of all boats on the same tide. And if we raise the level of talent in the ecosystem, we raise the ecosystem in total, and through that we all benefit. So today, as you probably saw in your invite, we're going to go through kind of an overview of the Salesforce ecosystem. What is it, and why is it a great place to grow? We're going to talk about different types of employers and different roles that those employers have within the ecosystem. It really is a kind of a place for everyone. We're going to have David Amiot talk a little bit. He's a guest story. He made the move to the ecosystem recently from a .NET background, and I thought that would be valuable potentially for some folks to hear. We've got a couple resources on how to get started in making it a reality, and one of the things that you'll see throughout the ecosystem is that there's just an abundance of resource and information available out there. So again, our attempt is to kind of curate some of that. So we've got a couple example resources of where you can get started, but there's plenty out there. And at the end of the presentation, for anybody that attended, we're going to forward the deck. We're also going to forward some additional resource links. So you'll get a follow-up email, you know, thank you for attending, and that'll contain the deck itself, or you know, a PDF, a recording rather, of the presentation, and also a series of resources, links that you can click through. And we also are going to make ourselves available. Then we're going to talk to Deb. We're going to have Deb talk a little bit about she's had kind of a winding path through the ecosystem and a really cool story. And I'll stop short of calling you a zealot, Deb. She's a strong advocate for the platform, and she's actually one of the reasons that I landed here at EnablePath and have had some success. We will talk briefly about some current openings at EnablePath and then handle some questions and answers. So if you have questions in the chat box on the webinar, just go ahead and plug them in as we go. We'll take them at the end as opposed to interjecting during the presentation. We'll take them at the end, and Michelle's going to facilitate that, and at the end we'll bring up any questions that you have. We're available after the webinar for questions and answers also, and we're highly accessible via EnablePath.com. So with that, let's jump into it and talk about Salesforce and the ecosystem. For those of you that are not familiar, and I doubt there are anybody that's completely unfamiliar with Salesforce, but just for frame of reference, they began as a customer relationship management application and kind of went in and were founded to provide Salesforce automation, to track salespeople, to track contacts, to ensure that we had follow-up with salespeople, and that kind of was the genesis of it. The cooler part about it, though, is that the application was born in the cloud, and it was really at the forefront of the cloud technology revolution and of convincing businesses to get away from owned server-based on-prem services and trust a multi-tenant cloud environment. So Salesforce, and Mark Benioff, who we're going to talk about a little bit here as we run through, brilliant, flat out brilliant man, and he's the leader, founder, CEO of Salesforce.com. And he knew that if he took a traditional technology path and tried to go through IT to convince the IT infrastructure folks that manage servers and on-prem applications that going to the cloud was a good idea, he knew that the IT world was at that point threatened by the cloud. So he took this approach of going first in through the business and selling the application in through sales management, in through C-level leadership. So he kind of forged that path, and through that not only grew Salesforce.com and the application, but really paved a path for cloud technology to become mainstream and accepted into, at first smaller businesses, and now, almost any enterprise you can think of, any government space, regulated space. So he's really a pioneer behind that, and there was an announcement today that we'll get to in a minute that kind of confirms that. So the CRM application was launched, but then as soon as he got into the business and the platform took hold, he really started to expand the services that were offered and launched Service Cloud and began to expand outside of that sales application. The innovation has continued, and today, the Salesforce is for sales is a flat-out myth, right? Salesforce is not an application for sales. It's an outstanding set of different applications that serve different needs across the business lines. It serves different segments of the business. It's also a technology platform for mobile, rapid, agile development. So it's really expanded. It was noted continually. Salesforce is was named by Forbes as the most innovative company for several years. Salesforce is really leading this the agile development, and they established thrice annual upgrades and releases. So 3 times a year they upgrade the application, push those upgrades out, and there's no additional cost to licensed users. So it's really taking advantage of what the cloud brought. They also continue the push into new business functions and have done quite a bit. One of the biggest things that they did, though, and this is what really opened up the ecosystem and why it's such a broader ecosystem than a lot of the other software platforms out there. Salesforce opened up the language and the platform itself for development by independent software vendors. So similar to Apple, right? And Apple being out in front of that much faster than Microsoft was, they opened development up and said, come build complementary applications to ours. Instead of taking a business posture that said, we're going to build all the applications, we're going to maintain all the IP, they knew that the way to expand the ecosystem was to allow for independent development. So today there are just literally thousands of applications built on the Salesforce.com platform and built in the Salesforce language to complement Salesforce itself. And instead of thwarting that competition and believing that the road to success was to try to control all that, they really opened it up. And today the App Exchange is one of the largest, it is now the largest business application store. It's appexchange.com. You guys probably want to make a note of that. We'll send it out but in the resources. But the App Exchange has been open for 10 years. And you can go to appexchange.com and see just full listings of all the different ISVs, the independent software vendors that have developed applications. You can also go and look at, on the App Exchange, consultants service implementation partners like EnablePath. They post, there's job opportunities there. So the App Exchange is a great place to take a look. And the main point here being that there's a lot of employment outside of Salesforce and outside of implementation partners like us. There's just a plethora of really smart, really fast, insightful, relevant development, app development going on. And it's very industry specific, so there's a lot of niche builds going on. And it's really just, when I found the App Exchange, I was stunned by how much work already goes into development, how many jobs there are really in the ecosystem. The other thing that transpired here was this opportunity, and Salesforce growth and the cloud explosion began to outpace the availability of resources to do the work. So Salesforce doesn't want to be a service implementation company. They're just an absolute visionary, innovative company developing platform as a service, software as a service, applications, and rounding out the ecosystem. What they realized that they were going to need was partners, implementation partners that could do these builds for businesses, that could take the just fantastic technology that's coming out and tailor it to be appropriate for the different industries. And so this broadened again the employment opportunities and the size of the ecosystem. They also knew that they'd need to, because the partner ecosystem was growing so fast, there needed to be some validity, a way to say that this company is solid and you should trust them. So they formalized, and they do a great job on certifications, both of individuals, and we'll talk about this and how it can help you as you launch or drive further in a career in the ecosystem. Certifications of both individuals and partners. So the partner certification that we earn and maintain is stringent. And if you work with a partner, if they're on the App Exchange as an ISV, they've been vetted that the application meets certain criteria. If they're a listed implementation partner, whether it's EnablePath or any of the plethora of competitors that we have out there, if we're certified, platinum means something, right? It's pretty stringent. They also knew they had to stay relevant. And this is today's special issue of Forbes. I just clipped this picture today. Innovator of the decade. And I can't tell you how many times Mr. Benioff has been on the front of Forbes, on the front of Fortune, just listed as just a pioneer and an innovator, and he continues to be a driving force. This is literally today. The news dropped, this issue dropped 50 minutes ago or something. I clipped it this morning. Deb Kowick happened to see it on the news this morning. So they know they're staying relevant, and one of the ways they're doing that is driving for mobility. As the drive for mobility gained steam, and the drive for faster application and agile application development just exploded, Salesforce made a couple strategic acquisitions, and I'm going to show you in a minute what they've been able to do with it in developing a platform as a service. So really enabling people to develop a la Azure, a la Amazon Web Services, but with deeper language and a broader ecosystem. And the effect that they've had has been just absolutely fantastic. And they keep driving. This year we've seen already in the ecosystem some big moves by Salesforce. Earlier in the year, Salesforce acquired a company called SteelBrick. They're a configure, price, and quote application that really rounded out the Sales Cloud application that they had. And this is where Salesforce and specifically Mr. Benioff are just brilliant. He doesn't let ego of the company say we have to build it. If there's somebody that's built a smart application that fits well in the portfolio, they'll go buy it and augment their platform. So it's really, I guess I'm beating the drum a little too hard here. I sound like an evangelist. The point being, this isn't a bubble. It's a train, and this train is running and continues to run, and the conductor is sharp, and the engine is really strong. They made another move and licensed some IP to launch Field Service Lightning. One of the things that they recognized that the service business needed more mobile accessibility to data. And then lastly, and this was just in, I guess, beginning of July, they acquired a company called Demandware. And this was the largest acquisition to date by Salesforce. And what Demandware is an e-commerce tool. And from what analysts have read into and suggested in the public space is that it's the foray for Salesforce to grow more into the B2C world. Primarily, Salesforce has been at least at their application core, a business-to-business platform. And now they've expanded into yet another just huge piece of commerce in the e-commerce space, and they're launching the Commerce Cloud, and I think we'll hear a lot about that at Dreamforce, which is the Salesforce user conference, annual user conference. So again, the point being that there's nobody sitting on their laurels there, and that the ecosystem continues to grow, and for that reason, from my perspective, is an excellent place for employment and for a career as opposed to a job. You know, there's a lot of different places you can go and do a lot of different things rather that you can do. So for a competitive position in the marketplace, this chart on the left, and some of you may be familiar with Gartner that puts out the quote-unquote magic quadrant slides. This is for CRM, Customer Engagement Center, right? It's for companies that really are helping for software, for application developers, for platforms that are really helping customers engage, or clients engage with their end customers, right? How do you facilitate engagement with the people with whom you're doing business, whether it be through portal access, web access, standard Salesforce automation, case management, any of the different ways that companies touch their clients. Salesforce is far and away the leader in this space. And that's pretty impressive, but we know they started as a CRM company, right? They almost, I don't want to say invented the space, because certainly Siebel was out there, you know, SAP, Oracle were out there, Microsoft Dynamics, you know, had a small play, but they're far and away the leader in the CRM space. What, from my perspective, is a lot more impressive is in the platform space. So this is pure development, again, allowing other folks to host, manage, develop, sell, commercialize, monetize their applications and their data on a cloud-based platform. And if you take a look, you can see that Salesforce, by Gartner's perspective, has already passed, you know, is at a minimum equal to SAP and Oracle, are exceeding them as a visionary, and are already past Microsoft in the space by Gartner's view. So what it says to us as potential workers, employees, career builders, entrepreneurs, visionaries in the ecosystem, is that not only is it a great place for application development within Salesforce, but it's also a great place for us to develop applications and to grow in the space. So how does it rank competitively with regards to compensation? These are base salary ranges, and these on the left, these job levels are kind of bands, if you will, not positions, but bands of employment. And we've collected some competitive data from salary.com and provided some base salary ranges. And what you'll pick up quickly, because I'm sure folks are looking at the numbers, is that if you're working in competitive CRM space, the top end of some of the competitive CRM space base salaries, as listed by salary.com, are kind of the low end of the Salesforce ecosystem. So going back to our previous slide, it makes sense that if you're working in the top space, or the almost top space in the CRM application world, or in platform as a service, you're going to be earning top or almost top dollar for the roles. So the associate level is kind of entry-level spots, whether that's, and we're going to talk in a minute about different types of roles, whether it's a technical role, a functional role, a managerial role. Consultants, you know, they've been in the space a little bit longer. They're doing more development. They're doing more pure advice. They're doing more engagement. Maybe they're senior administrators at a large company that uses Salesforce. They're up in the ante a little bit. And I won't run through them all, but you can see it continues to go up. And the main point, obviously, of the slide is that you can earn more in this ecosystem because you're working for, again, the leader in the spaces that Salesforce competes. So we're going to spend a couple more minutes here. This is a little bit more in-depth and a little more germane to our conversation here as to the types of employers in the ecosystem. And I'm going to run through them a little bit, and then we'll run through types of roles that are in there. What I want folks to take, and I hope folks will take from the conversation over the next few minutes, is that almost any skill set has a place in the ecosystem. So whether you're a technical person, a functional person, a salesperson, a business person, an entrepreneur, a marketeer, a trainer, there's spots in the ecosystem because the ecosystem is so broad. So some of the groupings of some of the groupings within the ecosystem. Obviously, there's Salesforce themselves. They employ almost 30,000 folks. They employ folks worldwide. I'm in San Francisco today, actually. I'll be at the Salesforce offices this afternoon. They're based here in San Francisco, but they've got employment across the country and literally across the globe. They're a great employer. They've got all kinds of positions, and as you would expect with any publicly traded company that's that large, they have every aspect of the business, right, from sales through to finance. Any job you can think of in a company that big obviously exists in Salesforce. Beyond that, though, there's a couple different kind of categories that are important. There's the independent software vendors. Those are the folks we were speaking of earlier that develop on the Force.com platform and sell or monetize applications that are complementary to Salesforce. So they aren't Salesforce, they're development shops. A lot of entrepreneurial energy in the ISV world, a lot of visionaries in the ISV world. There's training and instruction companies, right? The ecosystem has grown so large that there's a big demand for folks to train more people. As I had mentioned earlier, the demand on the space is outpacing the talent pool, which for folks thinking about making a career move or advancing their career in the ecosystem is great news, right? There's more work than there are folks to do it right now. So consequently, training and instruction has grown, and there's a pretty good number of folks that produce that as a service. There's Salesforce competitors, right? Once you learn the CRM space, theoretically you could go work for somebody else. Looking at the Gartner slide, it might not be advisable, but you certainly could go work for the Salesforce competitors, and you have to consider them in the ecospace, right, or in the ecosystem. In an ecosystem, there's predators and prey, and you need both. There's service implementation partners. That's EnablePath and companies like us. There's a lot of us. They range from 2 and 3 person shops in every small town, city in the country, and honestly across the globe. Up to the massive groups that operate within Accenture, Deloitte, Price Waterhouse. We're a great size. We're kind of right in between those two ends, if you will, here at EnablePath in the platinum role. But there's just a plethora of service implementation partners. Some of them specialize. They just do financial services work. For us, we do some general business, but we do a lot of health and life science, manufacturing, travel and destination marketing organizations. So there's a wide variety, and again, the independent software vendors and the service implementation partners are very easy to find on the App Exchange. There's also public sector and nonprofits. So Salesforce does a great job of giving back to the community, and they've got a program that allows for discounted use of the applications and of the platform in the public sector and nonprofit sectors. So there's a lot of government entities, state entities, paramunicipal entities, and a lot of nonprofits that use Salesforce.com. So the gist of that being that if you have a drive to work in the nonprofit world, it doesn't exclude you from having great, meaningful employment, technical employment in the Salesforce ecosystem. The other folks, and this is a big chunk of it, and a lot of the folks on the call I noticed from the registrations probably fit into this world. These are the companies that are using Salesforce, and there's about 92,000 of them. The best statistics I could get. These are companies that use Salesforce to run their businesses. And a lot of the folks on the phone here, I noticed, look like they're probably coming from this environment, right? They're administrators, they're salespeople, they've come across it. This is how I found employment in the ecosystem. I was working for a company called Windstream Communications, and I was managing a Salesforce, national Salesforce, using Salesforce.com, and that was my first exposure to the platform. And I was stunned by it, and that's kind of what led me in. And a lot of folks, this is kind of what leads them into the space, is using the system, using the application, understanding the technology, and being able to conceptualize its use really across all business lines. So there's the gist of this one, there's a lot of different options, and almost any talent that you're bringing and experience that you're bringing correlates to a relevant employer or role in the Salesforce ecosystem. So let's take a look at some of the roles here in the ecosystem. And I've split them out without a whole lot of detail, but into technical, functional, and kind of blended skill roles. So in the technical roles, you've got your kind of what you'd consider typical technical roles. You know, developers that are writing code, designing applications, technical architects. Salesforce typically is deployed in a technology stack and interacts with other systems. So there's a lot of technical architects in the business that decide how systems are going to line up, what systems are going to be complementary, what systems are going to govern in certain instances. There's solution architects. These are folks that use the application of Salesforce and blend it to work in the business environment. They do configuration, declarative configuration. They understand process and map process to technology. There's a lot of UX and UI design that goes in, especially in the ISV world, around the applications that are being built on the platform. There's a lot of database management. DBAs and database management is a big move. A lot of times when folks deploy Salesforce.com, when they deploy Salesforce.com, they need to migrate data into it. And to use my house analogy from earlier, when you're moving is when you clean up your basement. So if you're moving from an old system to a new one, it's a good time to clean up your data. So there's a lot of DBA and data management work. There's a lot of system administrators, and this is a great role. And if you think about the roles, these roles could be either with any of those kind of employers that we looked at earlier. So a system administrator may work at a support company, at EnablePath, or they may work for a nonprofit and just administer the system on-prem, or they may work for GE and administer GE's massive Salesforce instance. So there's not, when we say system administrator, that's not just a help desk person, although that might be a great place to start. There really is career administrators of Salesforce.com. There's integrators, and there's a lot of technical work in integration. As I had mentioned earlier, the system's almost always integrated with something else at a business. So folks that can write web services, folks that can write APIs, that can write batch scripting, that can use ETL tools, come on over. Plenty of work in the ecosystem. And another one that's come up quite a bit lately is marketing operations. So there's a technical side of marketing operations, and you'll know I notice I separated out here as marketing strategist on the other side in a functional role, and then marketing directors kind of in a blended skill role. Marketing has really gone digital, as everybody knows, and Salesforce is at the forefront of a lot of that. So there's if you're in marketing and you're on our call today, think long and hard about studying up on Salesforce and on the tools that are available in the Marketing Cloud, in Pardot, if you're familiar with that, in Salesforce itself, use of campaigns. They're really going to continue to drive. And I mentioned earlier the purchase of Demandware and the move into the e-commerce space, into the B2C world, the growth in the B2C world is genuine. It's coming. So if you're in marketing and you're not sure what technology to get into, if you're using one technology and thinking about another, jump on it. And obviously I have a marketing paradigm. And Michelle, who's on with us, works in Pardot all the time. It really is. I've used a lot of tools in my career. It's outstanding. Functional roles. There's engagement managers. These are the folks that when companies are going to interact with Salesforce, potentially manage that. So in our world, these are folks that will go in. You know, if we're doing a large deployment for Visit Orlando, this is the person that's going to kind of be the quarterback from the EnablePath side in coordinating that project, making sure not that the project is going, because we have project managers separately, but making sure that the engagement between the two organizations and between multiple organizations is beneficial to the client. A lot of times an engagement manager is managing not just the company for whom they work and the client with whom they're doing business, but also some of these independent software vendors, managing expectations at Salesforce, managing when they go to integrate, managing relations with another vendor as they integrate to an ERP, as they integrate to Siebel, as they integrate to Great Plains accounting systems, whatever systems those may be. Then there's the classic project management, but there's also process management. A lot of times, if you're changing your operating system, it's a good catalyst to look at your processes. So businesses that are migrating to a new system will take that opportunity to say, how can I optimize my processes? So any of you Six Sigma process detail freaks that are out there, come on over. We got plenty of work in the ecosystem, and there's just a great need for it right now. You know, we drive value by helping companies improve their operations and operationalize their strategic vision. And there's a lot of process management. That's that nitty-gritty work that that pays well, is difficult but pays well, and it's actually quite rewarding. There's business analysts go in and find out what they should be doing, dig into the data. There's always sales and account management positions in the ecosystem. You know, they abound. If you're somewhat technical, and I could have put the sales role potentially down in the blended skills. I have a sales engineers listed down there, but if you're a good account manager, good relationship manager, and at least buzzword compliant in technology, there's a great spot in the ecosystem for you. Folks that are diligent in this ecosystem, as we showed earlier, make good money and have good stability. There's also product management. There's a lot of product management jobs going on in the ISV space. So in these independent software vendors that are writing applications, they need project management, right? They need project management to find those product sets, to find those applications, bring them to market, monetize them, build those relationships. There's marketing strategists. How do we use the marketing technology to drive our goal set? There's trainers. There's a lot of them, as we said in there. There's a lot of training opportunity. And then I had business analysts listed twice to remind me. There's business analysts that go in and analyze somebody's business for how they should use Salesforce, but there's this other group that uses the data that Salesforce puts forth to do analysis within companies that are using Salesforce. So if you're an analytical person and you've got some technical aptitude, Salesforce produces a great deal of information, both in its native function and in its Wave analytics cloud. So if you're a true analyst and understand Salesforce, there's definitely opportunity for you with end user customers or in the public and nonprofit sectors. Some of the blended skill roles, sales engineers have to think with both sides of their brain. That's where I came from in the world. Consultants have to be able to understand both the technology and the business so they can make reasonable recommendations as to what should be done. Ops managers like Deb, who's with us today, have to be able to both understand the technology and the business goal sets they're attempting to reach and be able to blend those two. Billing and commissions managers. If we've got anybody on the phone who's a commissions administrator, who's a billing administrator, if you want job security and acceleration of career earnings, look at Salesforce as a technology. There's a giant push going on right now within Salesforce in the CPQ and billing world, and whenever you start running billing through a system, you're also likely running commissions through a system. There's going to be a need here. This is a void. So genuinely, if you've got an inclination here, if you're semi-finance, semi-technical, semi-business, blended skill, if that's in your toolkit, come on in. The water's great, and there's a lot of work to be had. So that was kind of a rant. I realize I know I sound like an evangelist sometimes. So what we're going to do now is talk to David and have David, who recently joined EnablePath, talk a little bit about making the move and get another perspective on making the move to the ecosystem. So David, I trust that you're on with us.
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. Thanks for joining today. David, maybe it'd be helpful if you kind of just gave us a little bit of background and kind of your road before you found your spot in the ecosystem.
Yeah. Before I started working in the Salesforce ecosystem, I worked as a .NET developer for about 10 years, and I worked on a wide variety of projects, anywhere from simple websites. I worked on medical devices. I've worked on embedded systems. I've worked on it all. Before I started working as a developer, I received my education. I got a computer science degree at Oxford College in St. Paul, Minnesota. So I've been around technology for quite a long time. So I've been working at, like I said, a developer for about 10 years now.
And what was the catalyst for you? I mean, .NET's a good place, and there's good employment there. What was the catalyst for you? How did you make the move, or what sparked your interest in the Salesforce ecosystem?
Well, I have a good friend of mine. He's another Pathfinder, Damian Allen. He has been trying to get me to come to Salesforce now for, I don't even know how long I've known him, but for quite a while. But he's been trying for several years now to get me to move to Salesforce. And I've been thinking about it over the years. But in the past year, my life changed drastically when I had my first kid. And
That'll do
so
it.
when that happened, I started thinking to myself is what is the best way that I can prepare for not only just my career, my future, but also for my family's future. And at that time, I started talking to Damien more and more about Salesforce. And then he, talked about, the different types of careers, how I can get into Salesforce, and eventually we talked about EnablePath. And it just seemed to be the perfect fit for me at that point in time. I wanted to be more around my family because at that point in time I was driving to my job, 1 hour each way.
Sure.
So I was losing out on a lot of time. So the big catalyst was just, having my first kid and then, talking to Damien about the job and, I applied. And they, EnablePath, thankfully, I appreciate it. They hired me with no Salesforce experience and provided me with the opportunity to learn Salesforce, which has been fantastic so far.
That's great. David, you brought up a great point, and I should have touched on it when we talked about roles. But one of the big benefits from my perspective of the ecosystem, the jobs, the roles, the positions that are available span the gamut of travel or no travel. In David's case, he didn't want to commute, right? We work remote. I'm speaking to you today from San Francisco, but I'm Denver-based. Deb's in Raleigh. Michelle's in Atlanta. David's in Minneapolis. We're virtual. Our company is mostly virtual. We're headquartered in Atlanta, but this is true kind of throughout the ecosystem. There's jobs. If you love to travel, there are jobs where you can travel all the time. If you don't want to travel, you can go to work for an end user company as a developer, a system admin, a tech arc, and work an office job. If you want to be an employee, there's employers out there. If you want to be an independent contractor and work 1099, there's a huge ecosystem for that. You can go to the App Exchange and find demand for that every day. If you want to work Monday through Friday and keep the schedule consistent with your household, there's plenty of employers that look for that. If you want a flex schedule, you want to work flexible hours, you want to bust it as hard as you can in the summer and maybe taper off to 40 hours a week or something in the winter because you happen to live in Colorado and ski like a maniac. Those opportunities exist. If you want to be customer facing, those opportunities exist. If you don't want to be customer facing, those opportunities exist. So the ecosystem is so broad and the types of positions are so broad that almost any of those variables, and even a lot more than I can think of off the top of my head, exist. So you can really tailor that position, and I think that's a really good point, David. David, in closing, the switch from .NET to Apex, the language of Salesforce, and developing in Salesforce, how has that been? There's probably a couple .NET developers on the call or Java developers on the webinar with us today that would like to hear a sentence or two on that.
I would have to say overall it's been pretty smooth. The syntax for the Apex language is very similar to Java, and Java and C# are also very similar. So when I started digging into Salesforce and learning how to work with the platform, I found that there were very little hiccups in getting started. I was able to use my 10 years of experience to jump in and learn how to work with Apex. The language is the same, the concepts are the same. It's just where the development occurs, where the execution occurs. It's just a little bit different. But overall, it was pretty smooth.
Excellent.
Really, like I said, weren't any hiccups.
Excellent. And I'm taking a risk here. One of the things people often say is don't ask a question if you don't know the answer to it. But I'm going to. Have you since been able to get certified as a developer in the Salesforce instance, and have you gotten your Salesforce certification?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, actually, one of the things that when I got the new job with EnablePath was that I had no Salesforce experience, so EnablePath provided me with the time to learn Salesforce and study. So with the first 2 months on the job, I spent a lot of time just reading all the various, user guides, tech manuals. The big thing were the trailheads. So I
Sure.
think at that point in time, I got every single point available on trailheads. So
That's fantastic.
when it came time to do the actual exam, it was very developer centric, and I was able to pull upon not only my personal experience, but also the knowledge I gained from preparing for the exam. And Salesforce does in my opinion, a great job in providing the resources to get certified.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate it, David. That was almost a great setup, and honestly, that was not a known question, everybody, but that was just a perfect setup for our next slide, and so thank you, David, for your time. We've got a couple items here. You guys can screenshot this, but you'll be getting this. There's a lot out there available to you to get started in the ecosystem or to continue your development in the ecosystem. And you're all going to get these links. Don't worry about copying them down, but just to know that you can, if you're a technical person, you can set up a free dev org and get hacking. Get in there and see what it is. If you're more functional on the business side, you can join a users group. There's a lot of them locally, and get yapping. Go talk to folks, network, find out who's doing what, who's having fun. There's all sorts of events that go on across the country, across the globe, regarding Salesforce, and the user group in the community is remarkably tight and supportive. So there's a lot of folks out there that'll give you a hand, and these are just some examples. We have a bunch more coming. David had mentioned the Salesforce trailheads. These are great. If you want to get your learn on, you can just go to, Google it, Salesforce trailheads. We've got it here for you, but you can find it. And these are kind of guided walkthroughs as to what the technology is and isn't. They're a little hokey, but they embrace the hokey so much that I enjoy them. They're pretty cool, and they've helped me develop my technical skill set as well. The other thing I wanted to mention is you can learn the new technology and get out in front, the next technology, and get out in front. Because Salesforce is rolling new technology all the time, Lightning right now is a big push for those of you that are familiar in the ecosystem. If you go learn Lightning, you're not behind anyone. If you learn what is the next technology, you are as current as anyone out there. So don't feel like, geez, I'm 10 years as a .NET person, I'm behind the curve. Yes, you've got to lay some foundation. You've got to understand Salesforce at its base level, but once you do and then you learn the next technology, you are as current as anyone else. So don't think, geez, it's too late, geez, I know too much of this other, geez, I'll be behind, I'm going to be a junior resource. If that's your concern, go learn the next technology. We just saw Mark Benioff has been voted most innovative most innovative executive, I think now in the decade, I think is what that Forbes article is coming out is. There's going to be a next technology. I would say that e-commerce and that demandware and learning that in the Salesforce sense would be a way to just really accelerate your growth in the ecosystem. And then go get your first or your next certification and get your earn on. You don't need a Salesforce certification to be a good developer. You don't need it to be a good administrator. You don't need it to be a good consultant. But it sure helps when you go to look for a new position, when you go to ask for a raise, when you go to bolster your resume. That validation is important. I'm a certified Sales Cloud consultant. I'm a certified admin. Those things now are things I keep current. They aren't things that's not my role every day. That's not what I do every day. But I keep those current. And in fact, for me at EnablePath, it's a requirement. Working with us, anyone you deal with is going to be a certified resource, and we take it very, very seriously that we stay out in front on our learning and that we stay current on the learnings. I had mentioned just in passing the thrice annual releases. There's release exams 3 times a year, and if we don't pass them, we lose our certifications. That's true with all folks in the ecosystem. So you're going to get these and a lot more, but there's a lot, the salient point here, there's a lot of resource. You can start tonight. You can go get yourself a dev org when we get off this call and start hacking away. You can go take a trailhead. They break them down pretty easily, 15, 20, 30-minute increments. They're all just online learning. There's not a lot of barriers to entry in this ecosystem. That's the message. Any skill set, like we talked about, because of the plethora of employer types and roles, there's a plethora of support and materials out there. The ecosystem is strong and growing. The compensation once you're in the ecosystem is strong and above average in the space. The barriers to entry are getting in are very low, and the need for talent is outpacing the supply. The demand for talent is outpacing the supply. So if you looked at it from a macroeconomic standpoint, I've got demand outpacing supply, and I've got a low barrier of entry to get into the supply chain. And that would suggest it's a great spot to work, and it's a sustainable environment. So we're going to take a quick minute now and talk to Deb. Deb's the operations manager for us here, and we asked her to jump on because she's had a kind of a winding path in the ecosystem and has a great perspective on it. So Deb, I assume you're on the webinar with us?
I am here.
Excellent, thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
Maybe you can just give us a little bit of background, Deb. You know, how long have you been in the ecosystem, and how did you find your way in?
So I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for a little over 11 years now. Prior to that, I had 20 years plus of administration and operations experience in corporate and technology firms. Basically, you know, the client-server kind of systems where we had operations teams of 10 plus people. And then I got a call from a previous employer asking me to come and join a new startup firm. And I walked in on the job on my first day as the operations manager and found out I was a team of one. He handed me this big manual of Salesforce.com and a Salesforce.com for Dummies book and said, here you go, learn it. So I did. For 2 years I was a Salesforce.com customer and system administrator, learning the application, attended Dreamforce a couple of times, and Dreamforce is where I got introduced to the various consulting firms and found my first job with a consulting partner.
That's outstanding. What types of roles have you had, Deb? I know it sounded system admin at an end user company, and now it sounded like you made a move into the consulting
Yes.
implementation side of the house. What types of roles have you had?
Absolutely. I started out as a customer system administrator in an operations role. Then when I moved into consulting, it was a project manager / solution architect type of a role. Then I started focusing primarily on the solution architecture side of it with the business processes and the declarative configuration pieces of it. And then since then I've moved back into my operations manager role here at EnablePath.
And Deb, if you had one piece of advice for folks, you know, considering either a move or into the ecosystem or a growth move within the ecosystem, if you had, you know, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you had one piece of advice, you know, a nugget, what would it be?
I would just say go for it. Do the independent study, join the user groups. There's user groups in every city nationwide. There's a path for everybody that wants to be a part of this ecosystem. It's an exciting ecosystem, and it's extremely innovative, and it doesn't get dull. So just go for it.
That's great. And Deb helped me when I first came to EnablePath. I had to get a different certification. It was a requirement that I gain a different certification, and I asked Deb, what should, you know, how mentor me a little bit. You know, I trust her and trust her insight, and I asked him. She said, think Salesforce. Just think that way. Don't overthink it. Just think Salesforce. Just think about the application. Think about how it flows. And the other piece of advice that she gave me, and I'll drop this nugget, was when you're ready to take the cert test, the certification test, go take it. And when you fail it, then you'll know what to study. And then go study and take it again. And it was just great advice for me. Instead of, you know, you look at this massive ecosystem and say, how am I going to learn all this? I went and took the exam, found out what they were more specifically looking for and what in the Salesforce world they thought I should be focusing on. Then I went and studied that specifically and went back and passed the exam, you know, flying colors the next time. So I appreciate your insight, Deb, and appreciate you joining today.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
So Ashley, I think that you're on with us. I assume you're on the webinar with us?
Hi, everyone. Yes, thanks, Kevin.
Sure. Ashley's the Director of Talent Placement with us. We are, shameless pitch, going to go over a couple of the current openings at EnablePath, but again, I hope that we haven't been focusing too much on EnablePath. Also, as Ashley's going through what we have currently open today and what we may have in the future and how to get a hold of us, if anybody's got questions, go ahead and type them into the chat box in the webinar panel, and Michelle will aggregate those and pop them through for us. So go ahead,
Great.
Ashley.
Thanks. And we only have 10 minutes left, so I'll be quick because Kevin was great at explaining some of the roles that we have here as far as engagement manager, solution architect, and technical architect. We are hiring developers as well. The difference between the technical architect and the developer is the developer will be working with the technical architect. Our technical architects are responsible for development work as well. So they're architecting and developing, whereas the developer will just be doing the development with the hopes and goal of becoming a technical architect. Even if you don't fit into any of these current openings or the future positions listed at the bottom, we're looking at starting up some entry-level training programs for developers and solution architects. So please send me your resume, jobs@enablepath.com, or your contact information. We'll schedule some time, go over your background. I can give you some one-on-one advice of how to get into the ecosystem or the programs that we're working on developing right now.
And if you could, I know we've got jobs@enablepath.com. You can get us at enablepath.com. You can get directly to Ashley through that email, get your resume in. We keep them on file, so even if there's not a spot right now or it's a future thing, if you'd like us to reach out when there are openings that may fit your goal set and or your skill set, make sure you shoot it over to us. And if you could, Ashley, the solution architect role, it's kind of a hybrid. I had it listed as a technical role, not a functional role, but maybe you could talk a little bit about what solution architects do in our environment when we get on site with a client and when we engage in the project process.
Yeah, so the solution architect, it is technical to a sense because they're responsible for the configuration of the application. Essentially, they're doing all of the workflows, building out the application, everything but, the custom coding portion that the technical architect would be responsible for. So, if you go into Salesforce and you're looking at, I guess a lot of people call it the click side of the configuration portion. That's really what the solution architect does. For us, I think,
sure.
Some other terms that have been used for the same job in the ecosystem would be sometimes a system administrator, sometimes a business analyst, even though I'm not really sure why. But I've seen kind of those three thrown out as well.
Yeah, that's the part of it that jazzes me, is that the cross function between the typical business analyst, because the solution architect, not only do they do that build, but they did the design, and they did it after mapping the client requirements. So solution architects in our world go to the client site at the beginning of a project, spend some time understanding the business goal set and the processes, and then map the business processes back to this technical design, and then they build the technical design. And for me, that's a fun, I know I sound like a total geek right there, that's fun. That's a really fun part, that mapping of what the business is trying to do to the technology and then executing on the technology. To me, that's a super role. Probably because I'm not technical enough to write code, right? I can't keystroke code like some of the developers can, but I really enjoy that role. And as Ashley said, we've got a lot of positions now, and we've got future coming up. We're growing. We're in the same boat as the ecosystem. We're looking for talent. Right now, demand is outpacing supply for talent in our world. So, like I said earlier, come on in. The water's fine. Thanks, Ashley.
Yes, thank you.
We've got a couple upcoming events. We're going to be at Dreamforce. So if anybody's coming out to Dreamforce again is the user conference. It's just a massive near fanatical group of folks in and around the Salesforce ecosystem. Great place to network, great place to train, to learn, great place to see what's coming next in technology. It's just a massive event. If you're not already registered, you may still be able to. It's not a cheap event by any stretch. If you are already registered, though, stop by and see us. We're going to be in booth 128. We'll be out there the whole time. You'll get anybody that's registered here will get, unless they unsubscribed, we'll get notifications when we are holding events like that. Another upcoming event we have is a CPQ practice webinar. We're talking about CPQ and how to use configure, price, and quote tools in the businesses. And you'll get, those are just a couple of the ones that are coming up, but you'll get notification as we move forward. The other item that I always mention towards the conclusion of webinars is we've got a great managed service offerings, very flexible engagement options. What managed services are support, ongoing support. So if anybody has problems in their Salesforce org and you can't get results in the Salesforce community, ping us. Some of these are paid engagements, obviously. Some of them are not. They're just advice. So if you've got, if you're managing a Salesforce org right now, if you're an administrator, if you're a developer on, at a client location, or if you're just thinking about moving to the platform and need some thoughts and advice, our managed services team is wide open and highly flexible in our engagement options, and happy to provide that support. The other thing that you'll be getting towards the after this at the conclusion, here's just a whole list of the resources that we discussed. I had a snippet of them on the slide a couple slides earlier, but you're going to have a whole list of these. You're going to have a whole list of these resources and the links out to these resources. Michelle will send them out to you shortly after the webinar. So if you didn't catch it here, feel free to dig in, circulate them. And honestly, this is just a snippet of what's available for you as you get into the ecosystem. With that, Michelle, I'm gonna look to you to see if we have had any questions come in.
Fantastic. Well, we've had some really great content today, and we do have a couple of questions, and so I'll start with the first question. Does EnablePath offer internships for recent and future software development graduates?
Absolutely. We just had a gentleman over the summer, Steve Eggleston, actually from Switzerland. He lives in Geneva, came out and spent time with us prior to going into his final year at school. We exposed him to the technical side of the house. We exposed him to the sales side of the house. We exposed him to the financial side of the house. He studied and achieved his admin certification. Wide open to that. You can contact either myself, Kevin Smith, ksmith@enablepath.com, or Ashley, and she can point you in the right direction. More than welcome. Come on in. I would say that if Steve were to sum it up, he would say we dunked his head substantially into the ecosystem and got him started on his way.
Terrific. Okay, next question. This is from someone who is a J.D. Edwards ERP architect, 60% developer, and 40% functional.
Outstanding.
Has a .NET, does not have .NET or Java experience. Codes using JDE tools and their proprietary language, yep, and wants to know how he or she can make a change to the Salesforce ecosystem as a developer.
Sure, that's a fantastic question. The J.D. Edwards tool set is similar to Salesforce in its early stages, purpose-built, right, specific. So it's almost a microcosm. That ecosystem is almost a microcosm of the Salesforce ecosystem. So I would suggest that the experience that you have is very relevant, and likely you could retrace your path in J.D. Edwards, and we could map that similar path into the Salesforce world. The fact that the syntax is different, the code base is different, and I'd look to David if he, or David's comments. It is learning a different language, but once you know how to learn a different language and how to learn language, it's easier to learn a different language. So we would welcome you to come in. If you want to talk to somebody about that specifically, definitely reach out to us, and we could sit down. And what we would do, we use Salesforce ourselves. We manage our entire business on it. We drink our own champagne. What we would do is we would send a chatter post out within our organization. We would find somebody that has made that conversion already. we would partner you specifically with them so they could answer the specific, J.D. Edwards says, translation, to continue the language analogy, I guess. We would get you a translator that's already done that and somebody that's made that move, and we'll map you to them, and that's certainly a gratis thing that we would do. You could go to the user community, Salesforce user community, and post that's what you're trying to do, and I guarantee you will get 30, 40, 50 responses of people that have made that move. So if you'd like to do it one-on-one with us, just reach out to Ashley via that jobs@enablepath.com, and she'll remember it. She's listening, so she'll remember that, and we'll map you to somebody who's done that right now. I would just say, don't look at where you are right now, but look at how you got to where you are in the J.D. Edwards ecosystem, and think about those steps. And then we would map those steps, and because you've done them already, we would be able to accelerate that timeline to get you moved over. As David said, we gave him a couple months to get himself up to speed, trusting that he would do that work, requiring that he got certified, certainly pulling him in on projects, keeping him active while it was going on, and we'd be happy to, for the right folks that want to come over and join us, we'd be happy to do that as well. We kind of follow the Southwest thought: hire for attitude and train for aptitude, right? We need good folks, smart people that enjoy working with others and enjoy helping businesses, and we're more than happy to assist in getting them into the ecosystem. We probably have time for one more, Michelle, if there is one, but I think we're right at the top of the hour.
Absolutely. So between admin and dev certification, which is the most in demand currently?
Well, the admin cert is a requirement to move on to a development certification. So the admin cert is kind of the base level. It's kind of like a prerequisite in college, right? You've got to take your 101 before you can register for 201. And the admin cert is that cert. So the admin cert is the most popular. The dev cert is changing a little bit, and it's a platform developer cert right now that is highly in demand. So after you get your admin, you kind of have a choice. In my case, I got my admin, and then I went to the business side, the consulting side, and got my Sales Cloud Consulting certificate. So once you get your admin, you're at I don't want to say a fork in the road, because you can get more than one. You can go on more than one path, but you have to get your admin first before you can take any of those advanced certificates. In answer to the question, though, the Platform Dev 1 certificate that's just coming out, Platform Developer 1 certificate, is a new certificate from Salesforce. It's replacing the dev, the development cert, the 401, and it's highly in demand because to be a certified partner like EnablePath is, you have to have a certain number of certified resources, and that certificate is new and highly in demand. So I would be looking at the Platform 1. If I wanted to max my income, I'd go get an admin, pass it so that I was enabled to take the Platform 1, and I'd go get that Platform 1 cert. Michelle, if there are other questions, if you could capture from whom they came, I'd be happy to answer them via email or have somebody else on the webinar, one of the other facilitators or guests, answer those as well. But respecting people's time and realizing that we're at the top of the hour, I think we probably ought to wrap.
Fantastic.
Thanks everybody for joining. Watch your email. You'll see when we're doing other webinars. And as Deb said, just get started. Go do it. The water's great, folks. Come on in. Thanks everybody. Talk soon.
See you later.